Hi, my name is Jeremy Wood, and I'd like to present to you my unit lesson plan for English 490, Methods of Teaching Communication Arts. My unit title is Shakespearean Tragedy, King Lear, specifically focusing on that play. The content area is English Language Arts and Literacy, and this is for English 3, 11th grade. In the context of my lesson unit, students are going to explore the characteristics, origins, literary techniques that are demonstrated in King Lear. They will analyze, discuss, view multimedia, read, actually perform a scene from the play, have the opportunity to witness a professional performance of the play on DVD, and also be afforded the opportunity to critique the play by choosing to either rewrite their own ending or support Shakespeare's ending through argument and argumentative essay/letter format. And finally, the culmination of the unit will be when the students write their own short story in the traditional form of a tragedy. So their final culminating assignment will have to physically depict and use all of the techniques, all the information they've learned about what a tragedy actually is by studying a tragedy and also reading a tragedy, analyzing this tragedy of King Lear, and then they'll have to apply that knowledge to writing their own short story and demonstrating their knowledge through application. As far as standards are concerned, I followed Common Core North Dakota State standards, focusing on the sections of reading literature, writing, speaking and listening, and language specifically. And amongst those certain sections, I used approximately 3 to 4 specific standards per section, based on the needs of my individual lesson plans. The objectives for student learning are my main focus in this was to increase comprehension, specifically about understanding difficult texts. I believe highly that if students can understand, comprehend, and analyze Shakespeare at the high school level, it will set them up for success at the collegiate level and in analyzing and assessing other complicated texts throughout their professional career. Shakespeare's not always the easiest author to follow, especially for students that age that are not familiar with his works. So by exploring and analyzing his literary technique and character roles within a story, students will get an idea of what's it all about. Will kind of encompass what Shakespeare is getting at, or the framework that his writing is in. And then as we go through the story, we'll interpret the dramatic irony, the sarcasm, and delve into what actually makes this story of King Lear a tragedy. And can we actually define it as a traditional tragedy, based on what we know the definition of the term to be through ancient Greek history. The students will, as I said, witness a performance of a Shakespearean play at some point. I think it's important to do that because that was the original medium through which this play was appreciated. And the best way, I believe, beyond just reading Shakespeare to appreciate his work is to physically witness the play. I think there's a lot to be said for witnessing actors perform Shakespearean plays. During the course of this unit, students will revisit prior knowledge and tie that into their current knowledge for continuing education purposes. They'll share and discuss and predict events regarding the text. I want them to actually think and try and create their own foreshadowing and see if they can pick up on the foreshadowing in the text and really start to analyze the story for everything they're reading and what they're taking from the reading. So essentially, when the students complete the unit and the unit culminates, they'll be able to apply all of these concepts towards their own piece of literary work, which I think is the ultimate demonstration of student understanding. The list of language to be emphasized is extensive. I think it's important to focus on literary terms such as tragedy, protagonist, anagnorisis, hubris, peripetia, and cover all these terms before the reading occurs. So this would be my first lecture section. Unit questions that are important. Why do we characterize King Lear as a tragedy? What literary techniques does Shakespeare use? Does analyzing the story actually help us understand the story on a higher level? How might others be critical of our own writing, which is important to remember when we're critiquing Shakespeare's writing, how others may actually be critical of our writing as well. And since Shakespeare's writing is so timeless and can be read throughout generations, I believe this will develop a greater appreciation for why he is such a famous and popular writer in history. As far as the technology to be used, it's pretty straightforward, but it's also up to date. I would use a smartboard, PowerPoint, speakers. While the students are reading the text, I would physically have audio speakers going in the background so they can hear the words as well as reading them on the page. I'd use a DVD for them to witness the performance, and just Microsoft Word for many of the assignments. The order of the lesson plans are as follows. Lesson 1 is a lecture about tragedy, Shakespeare, and literary terms, kind of giving them the basis, kind of like a pyramid almost, building the base of the pyramid towards the culmination. The next lesson will be revisiting Antigone, which they would have read in English 2 in their sophomore year. I know this to be fact because in my Education 351 course, my practicum course, I was in an English 3 class, and that specific teacher revisited Antigone in her class as a way to incorporate that prior knowledge into their current knowledge of studying the Crucible, which is what they were doing. And I think it's important to revisit what they've read and then tie that into what they're about to read. So I would have the students write a cartoon strip detailing the plot summary and climax of Antigone, so that way before they start to read King Lear they understand all the elements of a tragedy, and then they revisit a tragedy they've read. Next, I would discuss these literary concepts and characters in popular culture, kind of relating it to them on a personal level, letting them make a personal connection. Then we get into reading King Lear, and we'd pause around Act 3, Scene 3. Obviously, throughout the course, we'd pause for understanding and discussion when necessary to make sure everyone's following. This would be the longest section of the unit and could potentially take longer if necessary. When pausing at Act 3, the next lesson we would actually complete and referring back to Lesson 2, we would take a pre-assessment matching of literary terms to their definition. I forgot to mention that for Lesson 2, excuse me. For Lesson 5, we would do a WebQuest quiz, which is a formative assessment. The emphasis for this quiz would be mostly just to check for understanding. And then Lesson 6, we would complete reading the story. Lesson 7, we would witness a performance of the play. Lesson 8, we would take a post-assessment of the story, which I think is important to check for understanding. Lesson 9 would be students physically performing a scene from the play, where they'd be broken down into small groups and have a chance to perform one of their favorite scenes from the play. Lesson 10, they have a chance to rewrite the play, or rewrite the ending to the play, or argue why the ending is how it should be. And then Lesson 11, they would have the opportunity to write their own short story and tragedy. Throughout the course of all this unit, again, my main emphasis is comprehension. And if students can learn to analyze, comprehend, and interpret Shakespearean literature, Shakespearean text, by focusing on King Lear, I believe it will set them up for future success in their academics, and they will be that much more inclined and improved for their reading and their abilities in the future. And that is all I have to present for my TLC unit lesson. Thank you very much.